Throughout this video, I'm going to discuss and explain my teaching philosophy, different lessons, activities, and learning sequences that I have taught during my experience as a pre-service teacher. I will link these pieces of work and experiences to show that I have met the ATSL standards and also to make detailed links to different theories and my own teaching philosophy. As a teacher, I believe that building a positive and strong relationship with the students is the basis of a successful classroom. Within this idea are aspects like creating a supportive environment and knowing the students and how they learn. This environment would be supportive of both the teacher and the students, and as a teacher I should provide a safe and encouraging environment where the students feel confident in taking risks and exceeding their own expectations. Important aspects of knowing the students and how they learn is to know how to differentiate my teaching to meet the specific learning needs of students across full range of abilities, and to know strategies to support full participation of students with diverse cultural backgrounds and students with a disability. My pedagogical position is a balance of a few different theories of pedagogy. Being a constructivist teacher will be very important in my philosophy because I believe learning should be student-centered and inquiry-based. I also believe having traits of a positivist teacher is also very important. Hinchy believes that the task of teachers is to become very knowledgeable in their field or what they have to teach, then to pass this information along to students in their own way. I agree with this statement, but I also think that sometimes the teacher needs to teach or give the facts to the students because students need to completely understand the information. The final aspect I believe to be very important is relational pedagogy. I believe that each of the three ideas are of their own importance and have to be evenly corresponding or evenly balanced with one another to be successful. My first ATSL standard I'm going to talk about today is 1.5, demonstrate knowledge and understanding of the concept, substance and structure of the content and teaching strategies of the teaching area. I think differentiation in the classroom is very important. Munro states, student differentiation means providing multiple learning pathways so that students can have access to the most appropriate learning opportunities compatible with their capacity to learn. I agree with this statement because all students should be given the opportunity to learn their own way at their own pace. When preparing differentiation in my own classroom, I was worried because at that stage I had no prior knowledge about the students' levels of learning and was worried about whether the work was going to be too easy or too hard. In saying this, it gave me an opportunity to use assessment as a tool to find out what the best way the students learned and their level of understanding. One example to show that I have met the standard is when I taught numeracy in a grade 5-6 classroom. It was quite a simple lesson and didn't involve much planning. The lesson involved most students to go into Khan Academy on their iPads. These students had one-to-one iPads. Khan Academy is a numeracy program that offers practice exercises, instructional videos, and a personalised learning dashboard that allows learners to study at their own pace. Then there were a group of 5 or 6 students where their numeracy levels were higher, so I found a high-order thinking activity which they could do individually or with their partners. This was a challenging exercise called Who's Been Sitting in My Chair? This is the exercise where the students had to compare the people and the table and the chair and the different sizes using informal measurements. The group of students did find it to be very challenging, but responded to it very well. The only problem was there was only 1 or 2 students who were intellectually able to do it, but chose it was too hard and just misbehaved and did nothing. So this was an aspect I had to think about for next time. Developing this lesson with student differentiation helped me to recognise my own teaching improvement. I now understood the importance of knowing your students and how they learn through doing differentiation in the lesson, and the importance of allowing the students to work at their own pace and at their own level. The second ATSL standard I'm going to focus on is demonstrate understanding of assessment strategies, including formal, informal, diagnostic, formative and summative approaches to assess student learning. In my experience as a pre-service teacher, I've been able to assess students as formal and formal assessment, and I have used assessment strategies including diagnostic, formal, and summative assessment. A summative assessment tool I used when I was introducing procedural writing in a lesson sequence over a 3-week period. This was adapted from a PD I went to that Michael Weimer presented about inquiry-based learning. The final assessment within the lesson sequence was where the students had to construct a toy using blocks that were supplied for them. The toy had to be made for a 3-4 student. As a part of their learning, the students were able to set learning goals as part of a rubric. This rubric was made through some of my learning outcomes and some of the students' learning goals that they set themselves, and they were able to assess themselves on how they went once the 3-4s built their toy. So first they had to try to build the toy, and the main and the most important part of the assessment was to write the procedure of how to build it. This including them taking it apart and taking the photos from their iPads of each step and writing an explanation of what to do. The students used their procedure writing skills that they had developed over the previous 2 weeks to write the correct instructions. This assessment task was done over a series of lessons and was very successful. The 3-4 students were able to come into the classroom and build their toys. It was very rewarding to see the improvement of the students from the initial pre-test to the final assessment, and able to see what the lesson sequence that I produced was beneficial for their learning. As a part of their learning, they were able to self-assess by using the rubric and seeing whether the grade 4, 3-4 students could build the toy with zero assistance, and if they could, then it was a successful toy, but in some circumstances the procedure writing had to be altered because it wasn't clear or the toy was too hard, so they had to rebuild it to make it buildable. This lesson sequence for procedural writing helped me to recognise my own development as a teacher, because as I was able to show that I could produce a successful lesson sequence. It was a noticeable improvement for all students, learning from the pre-test to the post-test and a final assessment. It gives me confidence for future planning that I can produce engaging and enjoyable lessons for students, and lessons that can further increase and benefit their learning. Since this assessment was successful, it indicated that I had created a classroom that the students were comfortable in to take risks and reach their own learning goals. The AXL standard I'm going to discuss is identify strategies to support inclusive student participation and engagement in classroom activities. Keeping students engaged throughout the lesson is obviously very important for successful learning, and there are many different strategies that help keep the students engaged. One strategy that I have used for many lessons is to have the lesson based outside. The last set of teaching rounds I found that the students were doing a lot of writing and was getting quite sick of it. This proved by the students misbehaving and becoming a distraction for other students, and work not getting done. So I decided instead of doing the usual literacy writing groups, I would create a literacy-based scavenger hunt / amazing race. The topics of learning at the time involved prepositions, conjunctions, adverbs, and advertising for the inquiry-based learning. So I decided these in the sentences I wrote in the questions for scavenger hunt. For example, first instruction was the preposition example, and it said, take a photo, blank, 2 different coloured tables around the school. And the students could write in the blank on the table or around the table or under the table, so take the photo under the table. I also had many spelling and grammatical errors within the instructions, and they had to correct them before they could finish the race. This activity seemed to really engage the students and encourage positive behaviour in the classroom. This activity actually really set up the day very well, because just from that one lesson outside, the students remained focused and ready to learn, rather than being distracted and fidgety. This activity allowed me to get out of my comfort zone with teaching, because instead of doing every morning, Daily 5 program that the students do most mornings, I was able to do something different and mix it up with a positive response. It can also be daunting when taking the students outside or teaching a completely different lesson, because the students could go crazy would go crazy, and since they are not in an easy, controlled environment like the classroom, they can take advantage of it. But luckily the lesson was enjoyable enough that the students stuck to the lesson and did everything that was asked of them. This improved my confidence immensely. This strategy of constructivist learning was very effective because as a teacher, I was able to lead the students to the correct information, but they had to do their own investigating to find the answers.